Hi golfers, Nick here for Nick Taylor Golf. It's Friday, so welcome to another lesson on golf tips. This week on Golf Tips, we're going to take a look at the stack and tilt golf swing and look at the differences between an iron and a hybrid. It's quite a popular question, how to hit the hybrid using the stack and tilt golf swing. In recent videos, I've taken a look at the difference between an iron with a fairway wood and also with a driver from both angles. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the difference between an iron and a hybrid. We're going to take a look at the face on camera. We're going to take a look at what we do at setup, what we do in the golf swing, and we're going to take a look at the club data between these two golf clubs to show you guys what the difference is. Before we take a look at the two different shots, we're going to take a look first of all at the setup. So I have my grid set up here. As you've seen before, we place the left heel on this center line here, which represents the left shoulder in the golf swing. And then we have this back T-claw here, which represents the ball position. So a good way to describe this would be if the left shoulder is positioned there, we have the position for the iron, two balls behind the left shoulder on that T-claw there. So that would be how I set up for an iron. Now in today's video, we're going to take a look at how we set up for a hybrid, why it's different, and the differences in the swing and the differences in the club data that we expect. Sometimes people think that with a hybrid, you have to sort of pick it off the turf and try and hit up on it. Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about what the data should be between the iron and the hybrid, just to give you guys some clarity on how to hit these two golf clubs. So first up, let's take a look at the setup for the iron. So first of all, we're taking a look at where the ball position is. So I mentioned there, we have the ball two balls behind the left shoulder. And my stance is, my heels are roughly the width of my shoulders, and you can see how my feet are turned out. And that's quite important. We're going to take a look at the width of the stance in a second with the hybrid. When I set up to the golf ball here, you can see my hands are slightly ahead of the golf ball and ahead of the golf club as I set up. So you'd see from this camera here, my hands are pretty much on the inside of my left leg as I set up. Now when we take a look at what happens with the hybrid, we have the ball now, a ball in front of that, so in between the left shoulder and the position for the iron. Now the feet are a bit wider. So now I have my feet wider, or my heels wider than my shoulders, feet turned out. And you'll see here the handle is just slightly ahead. It's probably in line with the club face on the hybrid. It's not where it was with the iron. So the handle slightly ahead, but not too excessive like it was for the iron. So you can see the differences here at setup are in ball position, handle location, and the width for the stance. Now with the wider stance, you'll see how that kind of presets a slight side tilt, slight higher side tilt with the hybrid compared to with an iron. My centers are more stacked. They're slightly angled away. And again, with the driver, we've looked at this in previous videos, there'll be even more of a side tilt with the driver. But with a hybrid, there's more side tilt than there is with an iron, but not quite as much as there is with the driver. So first up, let's hit the iron. So I've just got a standard 7 iron here. We talked there about the setup with the shoulder width, the ball position, the handle location. So this would be my standard swing with a 7 iron. Let's take a look at the ball flight and the data before we hit the hybrid here. Okay, so pretty solid contact. Kind of the typical ball flight you would see from the stack and tilt golf swing. So it starts out a bit of a push out to the right. Ideally that would draw back. It was a pretty straight shot. As you can see there on the screen, maybe a slight draw on it, pitched around 164. So you can see the data here on the screen. So the club path there was 5 degrees in to out. The angle of attack was 3.4 degrees downwards. You can see the contact on the face. It was a slight draw. The club head speed was around 92 miles an hour. So we're going to move on now and take a look at the data that we get from the hybrid before we compare the differences between these two golf swings. So next up, we're going to try the hybrid. We discussed the setup position. So we've got the ball here between those two T-claws, a bit wider stance. So just a normal golf swing. This is just a normal 22-degree hybrid. Okay, pretty good contact. You can see it just pushed out to the right there, just stayed out a little bit to the right, but obviously longer distance, so pitched around 210 yards. So started out to the right, but it just curved off a little bit, so maybe the club face was a little bit open. I'll try and start the ball a bit to the right to draw it back. Let's take a look at the differences in that data. Looking at comparison there, you can see the club head speed jumped up to 100 miles an hour from 92. The club path there was straighter into the golf ball and slightly less downwards with the angle attack. And you can see a pretty straight shot. I just pushed a little bit to the right, but contact was pretty good. So that's the first of all quick look at the differences. Let's take a look at the differences in the swing and the data in a little bit more detail. So we talked there about the setup positions, we took a quick look at the ball flight and the data. Now we're going to take a look at the differences in the swing. So I'm going to put the swings up here side by side. Setup, you can see it was a bit wider with the hybrid compared to the iron, and you can see the differences in the ball position as we discussed earlier. Now in the backswing, the biggest difference really is probably the top of the backswing, how the hybrid just goes a little bit further, I turn a little bit more, and my left arm just travels slightly further round in my golf swing just to create that extra bit of power. We saw the difference between these two golf clubs was about 8 miles an hour. Now some of that comes from the length of the golf club, and some of that comes from the distance that the club travels as well. So you can see that generating more speed with the hybrid. In terms of the body movement, there's a lot of similarities. You can see the head position, the way I turn my hips stays inside of that line. My arms stay pretty straight. As I start down, you can see how my hips move forward. As I come into impact, the arms are pretty straight as I hit the golf ball. There's probably slightly more side tilt with the hybrid at impact. And again, that shallows out the angle of attack. But the key thing was that I hit down with both of those golf clubs. And that's something that's a kind of a slight misconception. People think you have to hit up with the hybrid, but you can see that I do hit downwards slightly with the hybrid, and then into the finish. There's a lot of similarities in sort of the body movement really. So there's really a lot of similarities. I'd say the biggest differences are setup, the length of the backswing, and then the angle of the body and the side tilt at impact. Probably the biggest differences that you can see between hitting these two golf clubs. Now let's take a look at some of that ball data. So ball speed with the hybrid 144 compared to 120 with the iron. The launch angle was lower with the hybrid at 15 compared to 20 with the iron, and you can see the backspin was high with the iron for obvious reasons. Now taking a look at the distances, 211 carry with the hybrid compared to 164 with the irons, and you can see the ball flights there on the screen. So you can see the hybrid takes off lower and slightly higher peak height as well. Let's take a look at the club data. You can see the efficiency is higher, the smash factor with the hybrid as you would expect because of the lower loft. The club head speed, as you can see, 8 miles an hour faster with the hybrid, down to the length of the golf club, the design, the weight of it, the length of the swing as well. I'd say the interesting thing really is the swing path. So by having that ball position slightly further forward, it straightens out my swing path. We've talked about the grid and how the swing moves around in a circle and how important the ball position is, and how that affects also the angle of attack. So I still hit downwards with the hybrid, 2.6 degrees compared to 3.4 degrees with the iron. So again, down to the side tilt and the ball position can affect the angle of attack. So key things really are the way you set up, but not too many differences in the swing, which you might be surprised by, but obviously some differences there with the impact position as you come through. So hopefully it gives you a little insight there in the differences in the stack and tilt golf swing between hitting a hybrid and an iron. So main difference is really at setup and the delivery of the golf club through impact in terms of the angle attack and the swing path, as a result mainly of the ball position. So thanks for watching, golfers. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to find out a little bit more about the stack and tilt golf swing, check out this playlist, and I'll see you again next week for another video.